Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So I think we're waiting for a few more people to come in, but we kind of want to get the ball rolling. My name is Perry Kemick. I am the president of our club here called UM-CAN, Climate Action Now. It's our on-campus environmental group, and we're one of the sponsors that help put on this event. And I want to give a quick thank you to Northern Plains Resource Council, who has been totally instrumental, key player in putting this on in the different the Sierra Club. Everybody's been helping putting on. And of course, thank you guys so much for coming, because this is clearly one of those events that's really important that we have power in numbers. So we're here because we want to be part of the EIS process about exporting coal from the Powder River Basin over to Asia. It's going to result in a lot more trains coming through our town. And we were completely left out of the Army Corps of Engineers hearings that they've been having in Washington. They kind of just stopped at Washington and completely cut us out. And we are obviously going to be super affected by this as well. This is Barack Obama in the empty chair. Just kidding. This is an empty chair of Army Corps of Engineers. Kind of just pointing out, so just think about it while you're here and kind of look at those chairs, and it's just as a reminder that the Army Corps completely left us out. And that's a really important thing to remember, because it's kind of what we're here for. So kind of an overview of the night really quick. We're going to have Janet McMillian up here in a second. She's going to give about a 15-minute overview up on the slides, kind of about why we're here, get everybody on the same page, talk about why we're putting this matter into our own hands. And then we're going to open the floor for testimony. And this is the most important part, hence why it's called the People's Hearing. So if you have not gotten a chance yet to sign up and say that you want to testify, do we have, is it at the table outside? So if you can go do that now if you want. You can do it after the presentation. But we're going to be transcribing everything and sending it to the Army Corps of Engineers. And we're going to, that's kind of the point of this whole thing, is getting that public comment to them and showing them that Montanans are affected and that we care. So if you've not signed up, please do that. And I'll make an announcement later when we actually do the testimony as well. And then after listening to the testimony and to people's opinion about the issue, we're going to ask you guys, please, 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 to stay and write comments. Again, I'll talk more about that in a second, but I'd really like if you guys could write comments down, even if it's just a small comment, that's fine, or you can go deeper with it. And we're going to have pizza, a little bit of music playing, and just encourage you guys to stay around and mingle and write comments. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to let Janet take it away for a presentation.
Good evening. Thank you, Perry. Where'd you go? There you are. And thanks to all of you for coming tonight. Many of you here know about this issue, but others might not, so I want to give a short overview of what is going on with coal export. Most of the coal mining in Montana takes place in what is called the Powder River Basin. This area of southeastern Montana and Wyoming is one of the nation's top coal-producing regions. Until recently, nearly all of that coal was shipped south and east for use in U.S. power plants. But U.S. consumption of coal has been declining. As the demand for coal within the United States drops, the Powder River Basin coal companies have started to look elsewhere for markets. They have found them in Asia and especially in China. About half the world's coal is found in China, but the coal mines are far to the north of the country's coastal, industrial, and population centers where the coal is burned. Coal sells for around $8 a ton at Powder River Basin coal mine sites. It costs between $50 and $60 a ton to ship that coal to China. This is cheap coal for China because an equivalent BTU of coal at a Chinese mine costs $100 a ton, and shipping costs drive that even higher. According to the World Resources Institute, China and India together are proposing to build around 900 new coal-fired electric plants. Is this really a big deal? The growth of the Powder River Basin coal export market is real, and based on press releases from the coal companies themselves, will dramatically increase in the coming years. By the way, while some Montana coal is exported, the vast majority of the coal passing through Montana today is Wyoming coal. Montana will likely see at least 30 more coal trains each day. This is in addition to all the train traffic we now have, and the low-end projections from coal companies are for 75 million tons of coal being shipped each year. But if high-end projections are met, Montana could potentially see as many as 64 more coal trains each day. Remember, this is the total number of trains going west and east. The bottleneck now for coal export to ramp up to its projected levels is the lack of capacity at West Coast export terminals. Currently, Powder River Basin coal is being exported through ports in British Columbia, but coal producers and railroad companies propose to expand existing ports in Washington and Oregon to shorten the rail route. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is charged with preparing environmental impact statements for these port expansion projects. The first step in an EIS process is called scoping. This is the step where the Corps asks the public to tell them what we think the issues of importance are that need to be included in their EIS. The expansion of the Cherry Point port in Bellingham is now in this scoping period, but the Corps does not plan to include the impacts to Montana from all the increased coal train traffic we will experience in their EIS. We object. And this is one of the reasons for our meeting tonight, to encourage you to submit EIS scoping comments on the Cherry Point Coal Export Terminal project. Our comments can change what the Corps will include. And because the Corps won't come to Montana, Northern Plains is taking a busload of concerned citizens to Spokane on December 4th to rally and speak at the public scoping there. If you want to join us, check over there and sign up. There are other ports proposed for expansion in Washington and Oregon. The next port project that will be reviewed is at Longview, Washington. Arch Coal, which has the lease for Montana's Otter Creek Coal, is a partner in this port. If both Cherry Point and Longview are built, these two ports together could handle 100 million tons of coal each year. Remember, this translates into more than 30 additional trains going through Montana every day. All the extra coal trains from the Powder River Basin that come through Montana will pass through Billings. Then, at the rail yard just east of Laurel, train traffic can be split. Some trains could go north to Great Falls and then along the route that parallels U.S. Highway 2, south of Glacier National Park. This is the Burlington Northern Line. The other route travels west from Laurel and passes through Bozeman, Helena, over the Continental Divide into Missoula, and on to Idaho. This is the Montana Rail Link line. Montana Rail Link has publicly stated that this line, which runs through Missoula, currently handles 15 trains total, both directions each day, and could handle 16 more trains each day under current rail capacity, a doubling of the traffic. Check out the map on the site over there to see which communities each route goes through. There will be numerous impacts to Montana communities from the increase in the number of trains, and these impacts will go far beyond inconveniences. Health, safety, quality of life, as well as actual financial costs to Montana citizens. Coal trains today are 120 to 125 cars long. That's 1.25 miles. And there are plans to make them 150 cars long. Increased train traffic will lead to more frequent and longer traffic delays at rail crossings. It will mean a greater potential that emergency responders will be delayed in reaching residents when there is a medical emergency or a fire or the need for police. And then there are the health concerns. Diesel fumes contain particulate matter and benzene residues which have been linked to numerous health issues. Particulate matter 10 microns in diameter or smaller is a problem. Diesel fumes contain particles that are 2.5 microns in diameter. Coal dust is a known health hazard, and while we agree that coal dust coming off trains could be dealt with fairly easily, we have no proof that coal shippers in the Powder River Basin are spraying the coal with dust suppressants after it is loaded. They're supposed to do this in order to comply with federal regulations that require fugitive coal dust to be reduced by 85%. Because there's no monitoring at the mines to ensure that this is done, and it costs coal shippers money, we do not know that this is happening. As you see here, there are many health issues linked to noise beyond the obvious one of loud noise exposure to hearing impairment and deafness. Federal law requires train engines to blow their horns when they approach a crossing, whether that crossing has guard arms that come down or not. There is a process that communities can go through to establish quiet zones, but the citizens of the community wanting the quiet zone generally pay for the infrastructure upgrades required to allow trains not to blow their horns. Derailments may not be common, but they do happen. In 2011, Burlington Northern had 23 derailments in Montana, and Montana RailLink had 6. With the increase in the number of trains, the potential for derailments will also increase. Now, we all understand that if a rail company needs to upgrade the track or bridge or crossing in order to facilitate their current or increased train traffic, they'll do so and they'll pay for it. But if a city or a county wants to upgrade a particular crossing in the community to deal with local impacts, and the rail company doesn't need to do this for their business, under existing law, the railroads do not have to respond to local government concerns. The only choice citizens have at that point is to pay for any upgrade with public money, taxes from someplace. Coal company commercials tell us about clean coal, and they tell us that coal is cheap. But there is no such thing as clean coal, and if we honestly calculate the costs of coal to the land, to our health, and to our planet, we find that coal is not cheap. Unfortunately, the significant costs of coal shift into the future and onto others, while the coal and rail corporations pocket big profits. That is called externalizing the costs. So what are those costs? The destruction of the land, often productive agricultural land, that coal mining brings is obvious. But there are air quality concerns at mine sites from blasting and coal dust. And coal mining of any kind severs or disrupts underground aquifers and can contaminate surface waters. Then there is reclamation, or lack thereof. Despite the federal and state laws that Northern Plains helped pass 40 years ago that mandate reclamation following coal strip mining, it is not happening. And while most of all the coal being shipped through our state today comes from Wyoming, the state of Montana leased the Otter Creek coal tracts to Arch Coal in 2010, and plans are moving forward right now to develop the largest new coal strip mine in the nation in southeastern Montana. Arch Coal has publicly stated this coal will be exported. Which brings us to another issue, the Tongue River Railroad. You can get involved with this issue tonight as well. The only way to get Otter Creek coal to the west coast for shipment to China is to build the Tongue River Railroad. This railroad was first proposed in the 1980s, and Northern Plains has fought it every step of the way. The Tongue River Railroad would industrialize an area that currently enjoys clean air, clean water, a vibrant agricultural economy, valuable fish and wildlife habitat, and abundant recreational opportunities. Together, the proposed railroad and the coal mine dependent on it for its reason to exist would negatively, fundamentally, and permanently change the character and quality of the Tongue River Valley. Tonight, we ask you to join also in sending scoping comments to the Surface Transportation Board about how the Tongue River Railroad would impact your life here in Missoula, because mining Otter Creek coal and transporting it on a Tongue River Railroad would mean an increase in the number of coal trains coming through our community on the road to China. If coal companies and railroad companies have their way, coal export train traffic will be coming to your backyard soon. But you can make a difference. Raise your voice, get involved. Both the Cherry Point Export Terminal and the Tongue River Railroad are in the environmental impact statement scoping process now. Both would mean an increase in trains through Missoula loaded with coal bound for export to China. It is up to us to shape the future that we want. Don't sit on your hands. Use them to tell the Corps of Engineers and the Surface Transportation Board that coal export through Montana must be considered and analyzed in these two different environmental impact statements. We have postcards and other information on the table for you to use to send your scoping comments. All of the testimony tonight will be recorded and transcribed to be sent as official comments to the Army Corps of Engineers. And don't forget the bus to Spokane. Before we turn this over to public comment, I want to take a minute to thank all of the Missoula groups that helped us put this event together. Very special thanks to the University of Montana Climate Action Now, the Sierra Club, Blue Skies Campaign, and Montana Elders for a Livable Tomorrow. This event could not have happened without you. And now I'll turn it over to Perry.
Thank you so much, Janet. That was great. So as we were saying, we're going to open it up to public testimony now. So I just have a few things to say before Paige brings me the list of people. We have this tape recorder here, and you need to, if you come up here, I need you to speak into the microphone very clearly so that the recorder can pick you up, because that's how we're going to transcribe everything and send it over to the Army Corps. When you come up here, you need to state your name and your address super clearly, and I'll keep reminding you of that as you come up. And be sure that we got your contact info when you did sign up, because we want to follow up with you and make sure that your comments went through. And if you prefer to do this at home, that's fine. We have everything set up, but please come up here and do it if you want to, because it's going to be really cool. And try to keep it under 3 minutes. We have a timekeeper right here in front of me, and she'll kind of be giving you a time to let you know if you're going above or whatever. So we're going to start with Gary Matson. You here? Cool. Matson. I'm sorry, Matson.
Well, my name is Gary Matson, and I live at P.O. Box 308 in Milltown, Montana. I graduated from University of Montana and have lived there for 45 years in Milltown. I love trains. I love the haunting train whistle in the middle of the night when I can't sleep and I need to hear something good. I work for the railroad and I love trains, but not that dang many trains. that's too many. And in Milltown we have 2 public crossings, through our community, and I know that we'd be experiencing some delays in emergency services and those kinds of things should this number of trains actually come through our community. My main concern really is climate change that would occur from burning this amount of coal. And as Montanans, we have a responsibility to ensure that our resources are used wisely. Exporting coal to Asia is not a wise use. Our responsibility to future generations is to do all we can to protect our planet from degradation by man-caused climate change. Allowing the currently worsening conditions to be magnified by exporting our coal is irresponsible. Short-term economic and employment gains cannot offset long-term consequences of exporting millions of tons of our coal. We must do all we can to prevent export to Asia and to conserve the resource for long-term limited domestic use. So I thank you so much for this opportunity. And I think I made my 3 minutes.
You did great. Is J Bob here? You're next.
Hello, my name is J. Bob Yarger. I live at 1900 Maurice Avenue, apartment 119A. And my comment deal with the fact if we did have a representative here from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, I would ask him why isn't Montana included in this scoping process, considering the fact that we know the health risks and problems, and we know where the coal is coming from. Why aren't we included in this process? That would be one thing that I would ask him. Another thing is, people say that coal is cheap and coal is abundant, and my other comment is regarding that. We have lots of wind, and lots of solar, and so why, as a community, aren't we getting behind those type of solutions and those options? I think that our time and our money and our energy would be spent much more efficiently in that, especially in the long term. And like the gentleman before said, the short-term gain does not outweigh the long-term effects of this. So thank you.
And Carolyn Walker.
Hello, my name is Carolyn Walker, and I live at 411 Woodworth Avenue, Missoula, 59801. And my question is, who benefits? I have interests in both ends of this railroad. I have a daughter and her family and grandchildren who live along the Tongue River and work, and my daughter teaches at the Northern Cheyenne College in Lame Deer. And when we ask who benefits, on Otter Creek, there is no community there. A whole new infrastructure, a new town, new roads, new schools, new housing and everything else. And then when you dig into the mine, into the land, that part of the world is very dependent on groundwater, and with coal it goes. And this is not to say that all of the coal will come from Wyoming, the Montana part of the Powder River Basin. Some of the coal that comes from Wyoming, where they are in a world of hurt as the coal market collapses and companies get bailouts, but reclamation and water destruction are not included in the costs. And I don't know where their $8 a ton goes, because that tells me that they're not really considering the cost, which will be borne by all the people who live there. And along the way, I live in Missoula now, but my grandsons are the 5th generation to grow up on that land. And that's a sort of rule of those families in that Tongue River, Otter Creek area. My grandfather first settled on Otter Creek, and that was really a long time ago. But there are lots of Indian petroglyphs there. So I don't know what's going to happen to the people who are left. And anyway, even the jobs argument doesn't, no pun intended, hold water. There are far more American jobs associated with energy conservation as well as alternative sources than any that coal produces.
And next we have Howard Williams.
Hello, my name is Howard Williams, and I live at 436 West 5th Street South. I just moved, and sorry about that. Well, we're comparing, when you look at the gains to be had from a coal mine like this and providing the infrastructure, we're looking at very small gains when we look at the losses. I'm most interested in talking about the things which are going to probably appeal to the Army Corps of Engineers, although I think the issues go far beyond this community. I mean, they're global in the extent, in that the amount of carbon that's going to be put in the atmosphere if this coal makes it to power plants. But I think the Army Corps is probably most interested in local impacts, and so I'm going to say that what's very important to me is the health impacts on our community, the loss of property value because of noise pollution and air pollution as a result of the increased train traffic, and so the overall degradation of the quality of life in all the communities that these trains will be passing through. And I would like to also ask the Army Corps of Engineers why we and other communities along the way are not being included in the EIS. I think that's an oversight. So, thank you.
And next we have Dave Morris.
Hello, my name is Dave Morris. I live at 2120 Missoula Avenue in Missoula. And I guess I will come at this issue from the angle of security. The Army Corps of Engineers, part of the Defense Department, is charged in large part with ensuring the security in the long term of the nation and the people who live in it. And I think that this project undermines the security and the livability and the lives of all of the people in the area affected. I started out as, I'm a resident of Missoula. I live within a mile of the train tracks, and I'm frequently crossing that area, so I stand to be impacted by inhaling coal dust, along with all of my neighbors, and also all the other impacts that are discussed by others, the noise, the diesel pollution, all of that. I also am a teacher, and I've taken groups of students out to southeastern Montana to visit the Otter Creek tracts and to talk with the ranchers and the tribal representatives and elders who live in that area about the impacts to their land and their livelihoods. And I also have relatives who live out on the coast, kind of on the other end of the United States part of this project, and they are terribly concerned about the impacts of the trains and the export terminals, but also for the climate impacts, which, as many military studies have shown, are the greatest threat facing the United States. Terrorism pales in comparison. The economic effects of climate change are predicted to be far worse than any war we could ever imagine. And so I would encourage the Army Corps to consider the true long-term security interests of the people of the United States and of the world and deny this project.
I'm so sorry if I butcher this. Is it Charin? Shireen, I'm so sorry. I couldn't decide. I have a hard to pronounce committee too. I should know.
My name is Shireen Ayub, and I live at 115 Humboldt Loop in Helena. On June 5th, 2012, upon the request of many Helena residents, the Helena City Commission sent a letter asking for an environmental impact statement study that was comprehensive for all the impacts of coal export to Asia. And Helena, Missoula, Great Falls, and other cities in Montana have task forces that have studied the impacts associated with increased rail movement. In Helena, rail traffic is expected to double due to increased exports. And I will provide some examples of how state and local governments are paying for necessary infrastructure upgrades as well as related economic and social costs. According to an article in the Billings Gazette in September of 2009, a quiet zone went into effect that day. Greg Kruger, development director for the Downtown Billings Partnership, said that the quiet zone is likely to spur new projects because old warehouses along the tracks are often ideal for residential and restaurant development. Also, the #1 complaint at the Crowne Plaza Hotel was the train whistle, and renovations to the hotel were contingent upon approval of the quiet zone. Furthermore, a 2004 railroad crossing feasibility study concluded that the rail lines through Billings have played a role in the development and continuation of a social divider between downtown Billings and surrounding neighborhoods. The quiet zone cost $1.47 million and was paid for with some of the last funds generated by the tax increment district. Rail traffic in Billings is now projected at 57.6 loaded and empty coal trains per day. With additional Bakken oil shipments, rail traffic through Billings is estimated at 60 to 90 trains per day. Sister cities Fargo, North Dakota, and Moorhead, Minnesota built quiet zones in 2007 that cost a total of $8 million. That was paid for by the cities. A railroad bridge built in 1970 in Galesburg, Illinois cost $415,000. The railroad company contributed only 8%, the city 46%, and the state 46%. Two further overpasses planned in Galesburg have been delayed. In 2010, the cost was projected to be about $2.5 million. BNSF has committed to pay less than 2% of that. Capacity and congestion problems along the Powder River Basin to Pacific Northwest routes will require major upgrading and expansions of existing railroad tracks. A comprehensive EIS would provide Montana cities with information they need to develop vital infrastructure and capital spending plans. State and local governments cannot bear the burden of millions of dollars in mitigation, litigation, debt, and other costs associated with necessary improvements to accommodate export coal traffic levels. Thank you.
Do we have John home? Jan? Gosh, I can't read this. Jan home?
My name is Jan Holm. I live at 16 Greenbrier Lane here in Missoula, and I'm a member of the Montana Elders for a Livable Tomorrow, MELT for short. Our mission is to leave to future generations a more livable world than the one we are on a path to creating. And as I listen to what Mr. Mattson and others have said about climate change, global warming, and what we need to do to protect the earth, I am in 100% agreement with them. I want to take a minute to thank Northern Plains. You people have been in this battle for decades, while many of us have just come to it in recent years. I am at heart an optimist in all things, but I'm going to make 2 points in case we don't get the things that we're hoping to get out of these discussions, talking about minimizing and mitigating the effects of this process. First, we need to know what the problems with this effort are and bargain for the remediation now. We here tonight know that we're not going to get everything we hope for. I hope that we get some of the things we're working for. Coal is big business, and we are dealing with big corporations that, contrary to what the Supreme Court has said, are not people. They are organizational structures with certain legal rights. The small number of executives who run those corporations have one goal, which is not long-term benefits, but is short-term profits for owners and stockholders. They're looking at the bottom line. Knowing that, we must also know that our time to bargain is now, before the ports are approved for shipping coal to Asia. The Army Corps of Engineers can put conditions on the approval, asking for something while the corporations still want something from us. Things like dust suppression, more railroad stops, double arms at the crossings, overpasses, and rail yards moved outside air stagnation zones. Once they've got the business they won't want to do anything that will reduce the profits. The time to bargain is now. Second, I'll read from a document published by the American Coalition for Clean Coal Electricity, a coal company lobbying group. The following is listed in their mission: to promote the deployment to other nations of advanced U.S. developed technologies. Federal legislation should require the Department of State to carry out international technology transfer toward key countries and specific technologies to avoid, reduce, capture, transport, and safely store carbon dioxide. This would require the State Department to make sure that the coal is not shipped until the receiving country can guarantee that carbon dioxide can be reduced, captured, transported, and safely stored. Thank you.
We have Harold Home next.
Hello, my name's Harold Home. I live at 16 Greenbrier Lane in the Rattlesnake. So we do experience some train difficulties up there from time to time. I echo what the gentleman from Missoula Avenue said, that this is a security issue. And the Army and the military has been aware that climate change is going to cause serious security issues. It's almost like we're ships passing in the night here. Here the Army Corps is doing a scoping, which we're excluded from here in Montana. And yet the effects, if this is allowed, would create definite detrimental effects for the entire country. And I'm talking partly about rising sea levels. I spent some time in Bangladesh. I know what that's like for those people. The I guess events in New York recently would have to say, gee whiz, we get that over here too. And Boston is vulnerable. Our northeast coast is vulnerable because the rate of sea level rise is happening more over in the northeast coast. But what are we doing here? Are we committing a form of suicide? We just survived an election cycle where everybody talked about responsible use of coal. I have yet to see a brochure on how to practice safe coal, or clean coal for that matter. But The big thing for me has always been the climate change, and oceans have been a big part of my life. I spent most of my life on the ocean, and we have these big ships. If they allow this, they're going to be coming in, dumping ballast water because they're coming back empty. These are sort of specifically designed vessels for carrying the coal over there, and they're coming back. You have to have something in the holds for ballast, and that ballast is going to get dumped off of our coast. That's just one effect that's going to happen to the west coast here. The other is the rapid rate of acidification of the oceans, which can affect a whole bunch of things. So I sure hope that the Corps of Engineers will take seriously the security threats and the threats to our planet. Thank you.
We have Kim Devitt next.
My name is Kim Davitt. I work with the American Lung Association of Montana at 3919 Heritage Way in Missoula, 59802. And we'd like to see a public health analysis of the effects of the coal process that includes all the stages and geographies, from mining to transport to refinement. The analysis should include issues like coal dust, diesel particulates, noise, and should include both direct, indirect, and cumulative effects to respiratory health. Thank you. I'd like to cede my last minute to my 8-year-old daughter, Frances Dixon Smith, who's at the same address.
I think that the trains shouldn't kill animals.
Bridger, you're up next.
My name's Bridger Bucantis. I live at 2600 Maurice Avenue, apartment number A in Missoula. And, I grew up in Montana. I was born here, and God willing, I'll die here. And, I believe that we have a pretty darn good constitution here. It guarantees us to, a clean environment. That's something most people don't have. And, the science is in. Global warming is damaging to our environment. It's also damaging to the economic opportunities that we have here in Montana. Tourism is an amazing, source of income for Western Montana. And, I understand, Army Corps of Engineers, you need to decide whether or not the environmental impacts outweigh the economic benefits. But what this transfer of coal is doing is benefiting China. It's not benefiting us here in Montana. And I don't believe that we should allow these trains to pass through Missoula.
We have Linda Smith up next.
My name is Linda Smith. I live at 545 Woodford here in Missoula. My concern is for the health and well-being of the people living along the rail lines proposed to carry coal from eastern Montana through Missoula and on to the west coast. Those who live near the rail lines will be impacted by the coal dust and diesel fumes that are generated by many long trains coming through daily, especially the children whose lungs are still developing, as well as adults with breathing problems. I'm also concerned about community safety, with many long trains passing through small communities all along the route, and for the noise that will be created when they pass through, including the health problems that are caused by frequent noise. So I strongly support requiring a thorough, complete environmental impact statement to address these serious cumulative long-term health problems.
We have Janet Fierro next.
Hi, I'm Janet Fierro, 812 South Garfield Street here in Missoula. I can't quite figure this out, but I know that we, the people, created governments, federal and later state. And I know that the governments then created corporations. But we, the people, created the government who charters corporations. So we have a right to say no. No to coal coming through our communities. Why no? Well, you've all been saying it. Coal is dirty. It's dirty in its excavation. It rapes Mother Earth, and we can't get our ecosystems back in those areas. Transportation, which is the issue that brings us here tonight, is dirty. It hurts our health. The burning, refining, and burning of coal pollutes the air. And that dirty air doesn't know about political boundaries that are created by governments. They keep going across oceans and around the globe, which means it comes back and pollutes us. And I don't think regulation is the answer, because regulation is just saying, how much pollution am I willing to tolerate? We, the people, have the right to say no to things that damage us and our communities.
We have Lash Ashmore. Okay, you don't have to. We'll move on to Ellen Knight.
My name is Ellen Knight. I live at 5800 Rattlesnake in Missoula. And boy, I haven't done this in a long time. Dear friends and guardians, I'm writing to point out that there will be huge impacts in places other than Cherry Point if you permit this export terminal. It is unfair to leave the rest of us out of the discussion when we will be deeply affected by the coal trains that will ensue should the terminal be built. Let me express my concerns. 1, safety. I'll wager that every town along the track will be impacted by the inability of firefighters and ambulances to cross tracks quickly in an emergency. 2 examples. A Missoula, Montana 20 coal trains a day means Rattlesnake Valley and north side of Missoula will be largely cut off from accessing the main downtown for several hours a day and during the night. Traffic will be backed up in the only access routes. This will also be true for businesses and industry located on the wrong side of the tracks, necessitating longer, more circuitous routes to reach emergency situations. B, Frenchtown, Montana. Like many small towns, Frenchtown is divided by the railroad tracks. On one side of town, in addition to houses and businesses, are the grade school and the fire department. On the other side of town are located businesses, homes, and the high school. There is no way across the tracks except at grade level. You tell me how emergency services are going to get across the tracks when a train is coming. If there is a fire in the high school, how would the students be provided services? Multiply this by the exact number of towns along the tracks in 3 states and you have significant safety problems. 2, other rail services. If coal trains take up many hours a day as 20 of them pass along the rails, how will other products now being served by the trains find a way to market? Will they simply continue to come, thereby having the rails used even more of the time? And can they pay the rates that the coal trains can pay? Or perhaps they will be rerouted along the northern line. In that case, how will towns now receiving products by rail get their products? I'm concerned about assuring that there is diverse use of the rails. 3, air quality. It is clear that coal trains lose a lot of coal along the way. It's unclear where they lose it, in what form, and what the impact on air quality is. In addition, trains idling on the tracks release emissions with detrimental health effects. Will my friend Christy, who lives immediately adjacent to the tracks, have lung problems as a result? Or how about my friends Nancy and Chick, who live a little further away but still near? What about low-income people on the north side of town? Are they to have this added to the difficulties they already experience? 4, simple inconvenience is on a big, long scale. all along the rails. If we have hours and hours of trains going by, people in 3 states will have problems crossing to, for example, get their children to school, get to work, carry out business matters, go grocery shopping, get to doctor's appointments, listen to music, go to church, herd cattle. Are all these citizens, businesses, agricultural concerns, and safety providers to take a back seat to just a few business ventures because of the impacts of shipping tons and tons of coal overseas, where it will be burned and create more greenhouse gases, exacerbate climate change, and send the air pollution back to us via the prevailing winds? None of this sounds like a good plan to me who wants our nation to be strong and moving toward a sustainable future, a future beyond coal and climate change. My thought is that we can A, start changing now, B, mitigate later, or C, do nothing and deal with the dreadful results after it's too late to do anything to change it. I prefer option A, start changing now. I therefore respectfully request, beg really, you to include much more than just the siting of the export terminal in your evaluation. It's going to affect a whole whopping lot of us.
We've got Mike Janovic next.
That is Mike Jarnovic. I'm at P.O. Box 277, Milltown. I live close to a rail line within about 300 meters, and I have nothing good to say about what's going to happen from this, not only from the impact of the coal dust and the diesel fumes, but also from, I hate to use this term, but feckless behavior by the railroads, which if you've lived here for a while, I've been here 3 decades, we've had a lot of train derailments just in this area. And if you can remember back, those of you that have been here a while, one was in the Clark Fork River by Alberton. It dumped cars full of chlorine gas into the river. There was another incident where a train, they did not put the brake on and the train rolled backwards and had to be derailed east of Missoula, otherwise it would have rolled into town. So I'm not a big fan of the trains and how this will impact the local communities. Thanks.
We've got Ann Green next.
Hello, my name is Ann Green. I live at 303 Tremont Street here in Missoula. I want to thank Northern Plains very much for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm a biologist, and for the past 20 years I've been reading and been concerned about climate change and the predictions of climate scientists. One of Nobel Prize winner we have here, climate scientist Dr. Steve Running, right here at the university. These predictions are coming true, and we see them every day on the headlines of the newspaper, even in the Missoulian. Continued melting of polar ice caps leads to rising sea levels and more coastal flooding. Warmer ocean temperatures lead to more severe superstorms like Sandy, and the combination of the two we have seen the results of just recently. I think the governor of New York has just asked for $9.8 billion to rectify the damage just in New York City. In the Rocky Mountain West, more days each winter on average are snow-free. And I just this afternoon attended a conference by Dr. Scott Mills, who studied snowshoe hares for the last 15 years. And he showed many, many pictures of white snowshoe hares confidently hiding under trees with completely brown backgrounds. So these poor hares have not been able to adapt quickly enough to warming temperatures and less snow, and still believing that they're camouflaged, they sit quietly under the trees in the spring looking pure white against a brown background. It's pretty, it's embarrassing to see them. More and more of our precipitation is falling as rain and instead of snow and running off earlier than ever before here in the Rocky Mountain West. We have less snowpack and it's melting more quickly each year. That means we have drier summers and higher fire dangers. Last year, huge fires burned in the West. Many homes were destroyed, as you know. You all read about it, and lives were lost. In Montana, we have just experienced the longest fire season in recent memory. Beginning over the Christmas break, I have students in my classes who are firefighters, and they started working Christmas break last year. And as you know, the fire season ended with almost 2 months of choking smoke in the valleys around here. So that was mid-October. We also experienced almost 2 months of, choking smoke, that's right. You remember that. So these predictions that climate scientists have been giving us for the last 10, 20 years are coming true. And I am at a loss to understand why the Army Corps of Engineers is supporting a project that will increase the main component of climate change, which is called CO2. And the burning of this coal in China or wherever it goes on is going to go into our atmosphere. We hold in common. The thickness of our atmosphere is from here to Lolo. That's it. That's how thick it is. And if we keep pumping this stuff into it, we're going to reap we're already reaping the consequences. So I would appeal to the Army Corps of Engineers to halt this project, all of this project, and save us and leave the coal in the ground. Thank you.
And we have Lovelet Hansen.
My name's Lilette Hansen. I live at 127 South Easy Street, Missoula, 59802, about 2 blocks from the railroad. And I too like trains. Did, always have. Don't so much anymore. Some of these coal trains from Wyoming, I guess, they go through and the ground shakes. The ground shakes in the middle of the night. They're very heavy. They shake the house. And this is a quiet little subdivision. Like a lot of people my age, I have some, a few cardiopulmonary problems, nothing much. But hey, it could get worse. And I would like to ask, who is going to pay for the treatment of the asthma? Who is going to pay for the extra ambulance trips to go to the intensive care unit or the emergency ward? We hear a lot of whining about all the money spent on Medicare and Medicaid and how costly health care is. You can bet the corporations won't pay for this. In my opinion, the only way these trains should come through Montana or anywhere else inhabited by anything but a cockroach should be if we decide to get some real job creation in this country and build nice tunnels from the coal. Hey, why stop at the coast? Let's put it under the ocean. Tunnels all the way to China. But of course, the corporations would never go for that. But it's true. If they insist on this, if we don't get this stopped, then we should insist that these trains be rerouted as far as possible from any human habitation and that the coal be covered. Now, that's probably not going to happen. And I want to say, coal is not my enemy. I'm the daughter and granddaughter Montana homesteaders, farmers, and ranchers in eastern Montana. I have great gratitude to the Northern Plains Resource Council for the fight they've put up all these years, sometimes practically single-handed, standing up to the coal companies. And I remember when my father and some other ranchers in the 50s and 60s wanted to send wheat over to China because the people there were starving. Some of you may remember there was a famine in China. Famines are getting more frequent now all over the world, but there was a famine in China. And these farmers from eastern Montana were called commies and reds because they wanted to send grain to help the people. And because, of course, this might improve, hey, it could prop up the price of grain too. But now, these same people who like to call the farmers and ranchers of our state communists when they want to help people who are starving to death are very anxious to help giant corporations increase their profits and the bottom line by seeing how cheap they can sell our coal and destroy our land so the Chinese can buy it for pennies on the dollar and send us back the soot and the benzene and the pollution so our children can go to the hospital. And they tell us, hey, it's going to create jobs. It will. A lot in the healthcare industry. I'll stop, but I want to say there are many counties in our state that have a national rating of pristine air. We could do a lot taking care of people. We could provide much better jobs than these.
Nick, you're up next.
Hey everyone, my name is Nick Engelfried. Is that good? I live at 203 West Harlem Street here in Missoula, number 4. And what I would really like the Army Corps of Engineers to know, or what I'd like to say to them, is that clearly by choosing not to hold an official hearing here in Montana, they've told us basically that they really don't understand how seriously people in this state take our environmental health, and that we're going to make sure that the environmental impacts of these coal export projects are taken into account, whatever it takes in order to do that. We're going to make sure our voices are heard, and this is a great opportunity to do that. There are other opportunities as well. And last August, I was actually one of 23 people who were arrested at a peaceful, nonviolent act of civil disobedience at the Montana Capitol, protesting these same coal export projects. We were folks from college students like myself to grandparents who are concerned about the impact that it'll have on their kids. And that really shows to me the degree to which people in the state and this region care about our clean air, our clean water, our climate. And if the Army Corps of Engineers does their job right in this environmental impact statement, if they truly take into account all the environmental health impacts of this project, I believe that they'll have no choice but to reject this project. However, if they don't do their job right, if they do allow these projects to move forward, I believe that if it ever gets to the point where the Cherry Point export terminal on the Washington coast or the Otter Creek mine in Montana that a lot of the coal would be coming from, if those ever get near the construction phase, we will have regular working folks, students in Montana who are willing to go out there and stand in front of the bulldozers, stand in front of the trains if that's what it takes to stop these projects, because we take our public health and our environment seriously here in Montana. All right.
Carol Marsh is up next.
Hi, I'm Carol Marsh. I live at 420 East Front Street, Apartment 2 in Missoula. I work with Transition Missoula. And I have a granddaughter who lives at the same address across the hall. She's 10, and it just makes me very sad that she's not going to get to grow up in the world that I did. My concern is climate change. And whether the coal is burned in China or here doesn't make any difference to climate change. The more we dump the carbons in the air, the warmer the climate's going to get, the more we're going to get years like this year, only worse. Floods on the East Coast, floods on the West Coast, tornadoes, floods in the Midwest, droughts in the Midwest. Wildfires here, wildfires through the Southwest. And that's just here, and it's much worse elsewhere because the poorest countries always get the worst. They're already suffering famine in Africa from climate change. We're not well wired to deal with climate change. Our minds don't like to deal with problems that don't have easy answers. We have a lot of trouble believing that the future isn't going to look like the past and the present. And we're really good at denial. Our political leaders are absolutely dependent on the people that are dumping the carbon into the atmosphere for the money they need to get reelected. So we can't count on them. In fact, we should really know that. In Transition Missoula, we think actually we can only count on our own community, and we had really better be thinking about how we're going to provide the things that we need to survive, food and health care and transportation and everything here locally, how we can make this community resilient to climate change and peak oil, now that the cheap, easy oil is all gone. We need to we need to leave the coal in the ground. I said that to one of Baucus's staff yesterday, and she said, well, you know, he serves the East Coast, people on the East Side too, and I said, well, you know, the idea of political leadership is you don't just do what people tell you. You lead, you tell them, no, things have to change. And I want to say to the people here, not to the Corps of Engineers, that if we stay polite, if we stay law-abiding, if we just go on with our normal lives, if we let the corporations continue business as usual, they're going to go on destroying our world. We have to stop them.
Hi there. My name is Emily Capone. I live at 633 South 5th Avenue Street East. And I would ask the Army Corps of Engineers if in forgetting to include Montana, they forgot that Montana is the treasure state and that coal is not treasure. Montanans have the right to a clean and healthy environment because that right has been perpetrated before. We all know what happened when big business tried to extract Montana's mineral treasures. Montana doesn't need another superlative, the largest coal mining operation, to add to its already unusually impressive list with the largest Superfund site with the Berkeley pit cleanup and the deadliest Superfund site with Libby. Montana is known as the last best place. The new treasure it is in the business of is tourism, treasured moments. The development of at Otter Creek will do nothing if not hurt Montana's tourism. And I asked the Army Corps to consider the opportunity costs of this distraction with the unsustainable development of Otter Creek that will go into the hands of Arch Coal, which I'm pretty sure is not based out of Montana. And it will distract from green business and industry, all the good things that come with valuing the land and recreation and the protection. So, yeah, and it would cost us our title as Crown of the Continent.
So that's everyone we have on the list, but I'd like to open it up if anyone didn't get on the list and is feeling passionate. Cool.
My name is Charles Chandler. I live at 120 North 2nd Street East. There's two issues I want to address. One, we already have significant environmental impacts in Missoula that a lot of you may not be aware of. We have significant noise pollution. We have the trains that switch at all hours of the night, and it's sometimes as loud as a jet engine. So I live close enough that it actually shakes my building. It's not an old, dilapidated building. It's a brand new state-of-the-art building. So we already have that. We also have diesel pollution, and Montana Rail Link is responsible for most of that. They have these trains that idle sometimes 48, even 72 hours. So we're going to have more of that because they service the trains, they fuel the trains here. So it's not just the trains that are going to be coming. We already experience quite a bit of environmental pollution and noise pollution right now. The second issue, and it makes a lot of sense, is the reason this coal is going to China is because we're buying Chinese stuff. So we can't have new coal-fired plants here because they pollute too much, and we're closing them daily. But China doesn't have those environmental restraints. So the coal companies are going around our environmental policies and our EPA, which as weak as it is, it's still better than what they have. So those coal plants are there. So I say to you, and it's difficult, stop buying Chinese crap. Buy American, that's direct action, and it will stop what they do. So stop buying Chinese, and we already are experiencing things so that our Army Corps of Engineers needs to know that we already have significant impacts and only be bigger. Thanks.
You wanted to go too? Come on up. I think this is going to be the last one, so we can move on.
My name is Claudia Narcisco, and I live at 5607 Garrett Street, Missoula, Montana, 59803.